Silent battlefields, where historic photos whisper the untold stories of war and human memory. These historical photos of World War II not only capture the fierce battlefield, but also evoke the respect for freedom today. Please like and sub to preserve and share these unforgettable memories. In the midst of the brutal Italian campaign during World War II, a U.S. Army soldier is seen intently aiming through the scope of a bazooka during combat training. His face shows concentration and determination, ready for the battles to come. The bazooka, the main anti-tank weapon, symbolizes the technological prowess and indomitable fighting spirit of American soldiers on the European front. During World War II, on the deck of an Italian Navy torpedo boat, anti-aircraft guns were poised, their barrels aimed at the sky, awaiting the enemy's arrival. The crew stood at their battle stations, their eyes focused and determined amid the stormy Mediterranean. The scene reflected the high level of vigilance and determination to protect the skies and the Italian fleet from the fierce Allied air raids in the turbulent 20th century. In April 1940, Benito Mussolini, the dictator of fascist Italy, personally inspected military installations along the Alpine border with France. In the tense atmosphere before the full-blown European explosion, he appeared among the ranks of soldiers, observing fortresses and defensive positions, clearly showing his ambition to expand his territory. This visit marked an important strategic step for Italy, before officially joining the Axis in World War II. In April 1939, in Durazzo, amid the Italian occupation of Albania, a group of Italian soldiers were seen escorting Albanian prisoners in a tense and chaotic atmosphere. This scene clearly reflected the daring Italian invasion under Mussolini, which marked the beginning of a dark period in 20th century Balkan history, when the freedom of the Albanian people was stripped away under the heel of fascism. On October 20, 1944, in Italy, in the midst of World War II, two powerful Axis figures, Marshal Rodolfo Graziani and Marshal Albert Kesselring, met to discuss military strategy. In the tense atmosphere of the turbulent 20th century, the meeting between the two commanders reflected the desperate efforts of the German and Italian armies to maintain control of the peninsula in the face of pressure from the Allies. On March 21, 1942, amid the rough waves of the Mediterranean Sea, the mighty Italian Navy battleship Caio Duilio plowed through the tense atmosphere of World War II. The ship, the pride of the Italian fleet in the 20th century, sailed like a mobile steel fortress, ready to face any threat. The image represented Italy's naval power and ambition in the midst of the storm of global war. On July 29, 2018, in Warsaw, Poland, an elderly veteran quietly attended the 74th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. In his worn-out military uniform and his eyes filled with memories, he stood in the middle of a solemn crowd, where bells and the national anthem echoed across the square. That image was like an immortal symbol of the courage and resilience of the Polish people during the years of war. On August 1, 2020, in the city of Lankut, in the Subcarpathian Voivodeship of Poland, members of the local historical reenactment group, dressed in the uniforms of the Polish Armed Forces of World War II, solemnly attended the 76th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. In the city center, trumpets sounded, the white-red flag fluttered, and the memory of the brave spirit of 1944 was vividly reenacted, evoking the eternal pride of the Polish people. In August 1944, amid the raging flames of the Warsaw Uprising, the first German prisoners of war were escorted by Polish insurgents from the main post office building. They were taken through the ruined streets to the PKO building on Świętokrzyska Street, a former financial center now turned into a detention center. The scene marked a rare moment when the insurgents took the initiative in an unequal battle. Frankfurt, Germany, November 10, 1938. The Berniplatz synagogue was engulfed in flames on the brutal night known as Kristallnacht, Night of Broken Glass. The blazing flames lit up the city sky, reflecting the shattered glass from destroyed shops and synagogues. It was more than just physical devastation, but a moment that foreshadowed the genocidal nightmare that was about to engulf Europe. After the Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, smoke and fire engulfed the U.S. naval base. The USS Maryland was severely damaged, and the USS Oklahoma capsized amid flames and burning oil. Sirens sounded everywhere, marking the beginning of World War II in the Pacific, a tragic and haunting chapter in human history. In 1938, Nazi shock troops marched through the streets of Germany in an atmosphere of tension and hatred. They carried large signs with the inciting words, "Germans, defend yourselves, don't buy from Jews." The march was not only anti-Semitic propaganda, but also the opening step of a wave of brutal violence and discrimination that would later lead to the Holocaust. From July 17th to August 2nd, 1945, the Potsdam Conference took place in the post-war occupied city of Potsdam, Germany. Here the three victorious powers, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, represented by Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill, later Clement Attlee, and Harry S. Truman, respectively, came together to shape the New World Order. They discussed punishing the defeated Nazi Germany, rebuilding Europe, concluding a peace treaty, and dealing with the devastating consequences of World War II. On the 1st of August 1944, in the first hours of the Warsaw Uprising, Major Alphonse Kotowski, nicknamed Okon, appeared amidst the smoke and flames in the west of the city. On the desolate street where the first shots rang out, he commanded his unit with a determined look, inspiring the Polish army and people to resist. Amid the ruins of buildings, the image of that resilient commander became a symbol of Warsaw's indomitable courage. On the peaceful Hauteville-Martigny Road in France, around May 3, 1940, the Polish Army's Guards Division solemnly celebrated the National Day of May 3, the day of the historic Constitutional Declaration. Under the gloomy sky before the storm of war, the ceremony of awarding the title of Guard took place solemnly as the exiled sons of Poland stood in line, hands on their chests, swearing allegiance to the fatherland, even in a foreign land. Exhausted soldiers of the Radoslav Regiment emerged from the sewer after hours of arduous marching through the sewer system. From Krasinski Square to Warecka Street in the Śródmieścia district in the early morning of September 2, 1944. Their faces were smeared with mud, but their eyes still shone with indomitable will. Among them was a boy wearing an oversized helmet, Tadeusz Mashinka Reischczak, a young soldier of the Miotwa Battalion, a symbol of indomitable courage. The Soviet flamethrower KHT-26, OT-26, lies charred in the middle of a cold field, a remnant of the fierce battles during the German invasion of Russia in 1941. The tank's body is distorted, its turret torn apart, and smoke still smoldering, a silent witness to the brutal beginning of the war. That image deeply engraves the moment when war swept everything away, leaving only cold steel and ashes. In August 1944, in the midst of the Warsaw Uprising, a group of captured German prisoners of war were held in the courtyard of a townhouse on Zielna Street. Dust and gunpowder still hung in the air as Polish resistance fighters guarded them with determined eyes. Against the backdrop of the city's ruins, the image vividly captured a rare turning point. when an invader becomes a prisoner of his own battlefield. In the 1940s, amid the bloody Warsaw Uprising, desperate Jews were captured by the Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto. They were herded into the desolate streets under the cold barrels of guns, their eyes filled with bewilderment and utter fear. Smoke, rubble, and screams combined to create a haunting scene of one of the darkest chapters in human history, a brutal defeat of faith and life. In August 1944, during the fierce days of the Warsaw Uprising, nurse Janina Stężniewska, nicknamed Inka, cared for the wounded soldier Edmund Michniewski, Mish, in the field hospital of the Koszta Company. Next to them was their little daughter Hania, a symbol of innocence in the midst of war. In the makeshift room, the groans of the wounded mixed with Inka's gentle voice, a testament to the never-ending kindness in the darkness of war. Around September 18, 1944, amid the jubilation of liberation, residents and a pastor cheerfully handed out fruit to soldiers in armored vehicles, presumably Irish guards. The smiles, handshakes, and friendly gestures between civilians and soldiers created a moving scene, where the joy of freedom mingled with deep gratitude for those who had fought to bring peace. On September 18, 1944, Irish Guards tank units entered the town of Ulster and took up a strategic position at a key crossroads. Battle-dusted tanks roared through the devastated streets, while vigilant soldiers kept watch in all directions. The atmosphere was tense, mixed with hope, as locals peeked out of their windows to witness the advance of the liberating forces in the final days of German occupation. In the early 1940s, Australian soldiers marched through the El Alamein Desert, where hot sand and gunpowder mixed in a fierce battle against German and Italian forces. Under the scorching North African sun, they moved silently between the dunes, carrying with them an iron will and unyielding courage. The Battle of El Alamein became a symbol of the Australian Army's fighting spirit in World War II. In 1945, in the tumultuous final days of World War II, war volunteers gathered at the building on Museum Square to complete the military service. Their faces were a mixture of anxiety and determination as they signed their names on the list, ready to leave their daily lives to serve their country. The square that day became a symbol of patriotism and the spirit of sacrifice of a generation. On December 21, 1940, newly freed Italian prisoners from Wadi Sarar camp sat together, quietly enjoying their first meal of freedom. Their faces were haggard, but their eyes shone with relief and hope. Amid the harsh landscape of war, this simple moment had profound meaning, marking the rebirth of people once imprisoned in darkness. On the shores of Normandy, France, an Allied mortar team prepares to fire on Nazi positions. The soldiers brace themselves against the smoke, their eyes focused as they stand back, waiting for the moment to fire. The sound of the waves mingles with the echoes of war, signaling the fierce battle underway, where courage and indomitable spirit are tested amid the flames of Normandy. On June 6, 1944, at Colleville-sur-Mer, Normandy, a large group of American assault troops from the 3rd Battalion, 16th Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, took a break after crossing the blood-soaked beach. Leaning against the chalk cliffs, they took a rare breath of fresh air before pushing inland. Their fellow medics quickly bandaged minor wounds, while artillery fire echoed in the distance, signaling that the battle had just begun. On June 10, 1944, at Les Dunes de Varaville, France, in a farmyard cleared of German snipers, American soldiers huddled around a tactical map. Amid the devastation of war, they calmly planned their next attack. Their uniforms were still covered in mud, but their eyes were filled with determination to continue the journey to liberate France, step by step on the road to victory. In 1944, during the tragic Warsaw Uprising, a soldier of the OWKB Sokół Battalion of the Polish Home Army stood defiantly behind a barricade on Bracka Street, near the Nowogrodzka intersection. Amidst the smoke and the roar of bullets, he was a symbol of indomitable spirit, fighting not only with weapons, but with a strong belief in freedom and a desire to liberate his homeland from the brutal Nazi occupation. Around September 1st, 1944, during the Warsaw Uprising, 2 medics and a soldier from the Parasol Battalion emerged from a sewer on Warecka Street near Nowy Świat, in the northern Śródmieście district. Between them was Maria Stypułkowska-Chojecka, nicknamed Kama, and on the right was Krzysztof Palester, Kryj. Their faces were covered in mud, but their eyes were shining. They were living symbols of courage and indomitable spirit in the hell of war. Leonard Siflete, a radio operator with the Australian Special Forces during World War II, is about to be executed by a Japanese officer at Aitape Beach, Papua New Guinea, 24th October, 1943. This photograph is believed to have been taken from the body of a dead Japanese officer. Tokyo during World War II. The Matsuzakaya department store stands tall amid the charred ruins of Tokyo's Ginza district. The opening of Matsuzakaya in the 1920s marked the rise of Ginza as Tokyo's most vibrant retail district, and the building boasted a zoo and rooftop garden. The U.S. Air Force's bombing campaign destroyed about a quarter of the city and killed 100,000 people. During World War II, Ukrainians were forced to clear rubble and help rebuild Kharkiv, Ukraine, Soviet Union, after Nazi German forces recaptured the city in March 1943. Kharkiv changed hands 5 times between the start of Operation Barbarossa in June 1941 and the end of the war. In 1944, the Monte Cassino Monastery in Italy, founded by Saint Benedict in 529, was leveled by Allied bombs and artillery. Commanders believed the monastery was being used as an observation post by the Germans, but in reality, it was just civilians hiding inside. This mistake turned out to be a major propaganda victory for the Nazis. Ironically, despite their lack of presence, the Germans quickly occupied the ruins, making it an ideal defensive position. Monks wandered the ruins, rediscovering traces of the past, while the Allies spent 2 grueling months dislodging the enemy from the fortress they had accidentally created. While most school children cowered under their desks during air raids, adults who were out during a terrorist attack often had to run to the nearest tube station to minimize their risk of death, like these Londoners during a German air raid. While the tube offered a relatively high level of protection, those who took shelter there could still be confined to their new tube homes for days, with bombs occasionally penetrating shallower parts of the station. Circa 1943, German soldiers evacuate a house in Kharkov, destroyed by Russian artillery fire. In December 1942 in Detroit, Michigan, inside the Ford Motor Company's Willow Run B-24 Liberty plant, fuselages and wings for 4-engine consolidated B-24 Liberator heavy bombers were being rapidly assembled. This was one of the largest-scale aircraft production lines of its time, serving directly for the United States Army Air Force, USAAF. Willow Run was not only a symbol of American industrial might during World War II, but also demonstrated the ability to rapidly transition from automobile production to the manufacture of war equipment, contributing decisively to the Allies' air superiority. In the final days of World War II, Hitler desperately relied on the fledgling youth force from the Hitler Youth turning them into reluctant soldiers on the bloody battlefield. In the photo, he appears with a cold gaze, gently touching the face of a boy who had just been awarded a medal, as if to instill blind faith in them. These young faces, not yet 20 years old, were caught up in the vortex of propaganda, becoming human shields for a regime about to collapse. This is a tragic testament to the exploitation of youth in the frenzy of war.